Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Share Screen Africa event. My name is Ciel Vaughan and I will be your host for today's event. First of all, I'd like to say a very, very warm welcome to our primary audience for this Masai Mara Conservation Series, that is the Wildlife Tourism College, and a very warm welcome as well to everyone else in the audience who's watching. I'd also like to say welcome and thank you very much to our two wonderful speakers this morning. They will be talking about their work at the Mara Predator Conservation Program. So I'm just going to start by doing a short introduction. Our first speaker today is Kasaini Sankan. He is the senior researcher at the Mara Predator Conservation Program. So Kasaini is from Narok County, and Narok is renowned for its abundant wildlife. So Kasaini developed a passion and a strong affinity for wildlife conservation at a young age, being from here. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from the University of Eldoret, and he's currently in the final process of completing his master's degree from the University of Nairobi. His thesis project is focusing on the spatio-temporal habitat use patterns of collared lions within the Masai Mara National Reserve and the adjacent community conservancies. And with over a decade of experience under his belt, Kasaini's journey in the field of research began with the Mara Hyena project, subsequently transitioning to lion research, where he currently works as the senior researcher with the Kenya Wildlife Trust's flagship project, which is the Mara Predator Conservation Program. So welcome, Kasaini, and thank you. Our second speaker today is Dominic Sakat. Dominic was born and raised in the Masai Mara. He grew up seeing all kinds of wildlife while he was herding his father's cattle every day during the school holidays. And after completing his high school education, he actually joined the Konyaki Guiding School, which is now the Wildlife Tourism College. So it's great to have an alumnus from the college, our primary audience, talking to us today. He became a professional safari guide after that. He later worked at various camps before he joined the Wildlife Trust flagship project, again, the Mara Predator Conservation Program. And he currently works there as the Community Outreach Program Officer. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and ask our speakers to give their talk. Just a few housekeeping. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this. If you do have any questions throughout the talk that you'd like answered, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, once the talk is over, you can use the icon to raise your hand or turn on your camera, and we will go from there. Hopefully, we'll have a really great Q&A session. So thank you very much to everyone, and I invite Kasaini and Dominic to now share their screen.
All right, yeah, thank you, Sele, for the good introduction. So good morning, everyone. So my name's Kasaini Sankan, and I'm with my colleague here, Dominic Sakat.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, so yeah, as I mentioned, my name's Kasaini Sankan. I work as a senior researcher with the Mara Predator Conservation Program. So I'm glad this morning to join you guys and share a bit on what the Mara Lion project or the Mara Cheetah, the Mara Predator Conservation Program does in the Mara. So I'm going to talk about the background, the need for the program, and way forward. So a little background. So the Mara Predator Conservation Program was started in 2013 by Kenya Wildlife Trust. So Kenya Wildlife Trust decided to have a long-term project in the Mara to look at the trend of lions and cheetahs across the landscape. So as you might all know that there's been a steady decline of these predators over the last few decades. And this concern led Kenya Wildlife Trust to start a flagship program in the Mara because previously, before 2013, there's not been any other project which has done anything long-term on monitoring of these cats. So this initiated KWT, or Kenya Wildlife Trust, to start our flagship program here in the Mara to look at the trends of these species. So Kenya Wildlife Trust is an NGO, a non-governmental organization started in 2007 by professional guides who've been in the tourism sector for a while. And then they wanted to connect tourism and conservation. and they saw the need after seeing the drop of these cats over the years, and they saw the need to start a program here in the Mara to look at what's happening to them. So KWT started this in 2013, as I mentioned, and it's actually driven by three major pillars. So predators, people, and partnership. So predator, we look in details two main species, cheetahs and lions, but I'll also mention a bit on wild dog also. And with people, because we're living in a landscape where there is like the Masai who own the land here, and you cannot exclude the people in any research or conservation work in the landscape. And importantly, also partnership with different NGOs and different stakeholders. We're all striving towards the same goal, conservation for posterity. So partnership is also one of the KWT's strongest pillar. So when the project started in 2013, it started as two different projects. The Mara Cheetah Project under Dr. Femke Broekhuis, and Mara Lion Project under Nick Elliott. And before 2013, there were two other separate projects operating in the Mara. The Mara Predator Conservation, the Mara Predator Project, which was around Mara North and the Marsh area, and then the Mara Nabosho project and Nils Mogensen, which was around Nabosho area. So KWT saw no need to have two separate land projects in the same landscape. So the two projects were merged to create the Mara Land Project. And then in 2018, KWT decided to merge the Cheetah Project and the Land Project to have one predator project, and that's how the Mara Predator Conservation Program was started, to include more species as opposed to only the two species. So the Mara Predator Conservation Program works in the Mara, an area of around the National Game Reserve is 1,510 square kilometers, with the newly established conservancies. And importantly, doing research on the cats, our predators, and also importantly on community. So within the program, we have two major components, with the third one, which was initiated recently. So the first one is research, the second one is community, and then the newest is the livelihood aspect of the program. So as I mentioned, the program operates both within the Masai Mara National Game Reserve, which is 1,510 square kilometers, including the Mara Triangle. And then we also have all the conservancies north of the National Game Reserve. So that's the study area where we follow these cats. And then further outside on the conservancy, we have areas where we call Lion Ambassador zones, and I'll talk about that more around the conservancy area. So for those who doesn't know where Mara is, so we're in Africa, and we're in a country called Kenya. So within Kenya, we're in the southern part, which borders Tanzania or Serengeti, and that's where the Mara, Masai Mara lies. Masai Mara is like, it's a fascinating place, beautiful place with an abundance of wildlife, even the culture of people, good climate. So it's like an amazing place for tourism. And that's why like it's one of the areas within the country with a very good tourism destination. So I'll start with the lions. So the lions are categorized as vulnerable by IUCN. This is because of the 80% lion decline in the last few decades. And through the decline of these species, like there was a concern that we might lose these species in the next few decades. And according to IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, it's indicated that within East Africa, we've lost like 59%, and within the Mara, around like 54% decline. So through this concern, KWT decided to start this project to really look what's happening, what's the trend, what's happening with these species within the landscape, and then come up with mechanism on how to address the decline and how to appropriately address the threats. So lion and cheetah research, we've been able to document the lion numbers and cheetah numbers since 2014. So for almost 10 years now, we've been able to show what's happening with the lion numbers through what we call monitoring session. So when we started, we had like 2 different monitoring sessions in a year, off migration and on migration. So, and then later in the years, the monitoring session was reduced to only one annually in the months of August, September, and October. That means at the moment we are in the middle of intensive monitoring session for this year, 2023, which started in August. So 2 main species where we look differentiating between the individuals. With the analysis that we use, you have to differentiate which individual you've seen and then the spatial location where they are seen. Besides the 2 species, we also collect a whole bunch of other information out in the field. And this gives us what we call abundance. So we look at, we collect data on, let's say, hyenas, jackals, people, livestock, etc. So like there's a whole other information that we collect simultaneously out in the field. So as I mentioned, we have the 90-day monitoring session where we cover the whole study area, both the conservancy and the National Game Reserve. We drive intensively to try find as much lions and as much cheetahs within the study area. So that's through what we call like have a snapshot on exactly the predators within the time frame. So out in the field, we have to differentiate between the individuals because we use scientific model to analyze called SSCR, the spatially explicit capture-recapture model, and you have to differentiate between the individuals. So it's just the normal capture-recapture model, but it has the aspect of space, like where you've seen on the XY coordinates. So how do we capture lions? We don't hold them physically, we capture them through photographs. So we capture different individuals, taking as much photos on the identification features for both the lions and the cheetahs. So we also use a smartphone application called CyberTracker to collect the whole information that we need out in the field. It's like the easiest way, better than the previous pen and paper, reduces errors, and it's quick. Once you connect to your computer, you just download the whole information quickly. And then with the CyberTracker, it collects data every after 10 seconds, so XY coordinates every after 10 seconds. And through that, it gives us what we call effort. So we're able to know exactly how many kilometers we've driven within the study area. And we aim to drive around 9,000 kilometers in three months. So with the lion numbers and cheetah numbers, it's extremely very difficult to approximate population in open source, open population. So within the open population, like they are free ranging, it's extremely, there's no way you can 100% say this is the exact number of lions or cheetahs in the landscape. But we use a scientific method which gives the closest figures to reality on the ground. So I mentioned SCCR, which we used the spatially explicit capture model, which was used in India for tigers, and it has been adopted now in within the Mara Predator Conservation Program, and it's now being adopted in other countries in Africa. So in 2018, 2020, Kenya Wildlife Service adopted this same methodology to approximate lion numbers within the source population across the country. It's the first one to be ever done in Africa. So, so different scientific method to approximate population usually is gives different figures. So we opted on SCCR because it's the one which shows what's closest to reality. So with the identification of lion, because I mentioned that you have to differentiate between the individuals for the analysis to work. How do you differentiate between the individuals, lions and cheetahs? So for lions, there's this method called feature where we look at the whisker spot pattern. So Judith Rodney and Penguin, Nairobi National Park, 1960s, and there's a paper on that, realized that the lions are actually different if you use the whisker spot pattern. So it's basically looking at the spots on top or the first row, and you look how many spots are there, so you count them. And then you compare their positioning with the second row, which we call the reference spots or reference row. So the whisker spot pattern of a lion on the right side and the whisker spot pattern on the left side are usually different. So that's the sequence, or that's the method on how to differentiate between the individuals. And then for lions, it's extremely difficult to only use one methodology to identify like the individual. So with a lion, you have to use a combination of features to differentiate between the individuals. So number one, the whisker spot pattern. Number two, you use like things like permanent marks, like the missing ear, permanent scars, missing teeth, territoriality. So, and then even the association of individuals within the pride. So, and then we also use the nose coloration and pigmentation. When a lion is young or like a cub, the nose is usually like pink or gray in color. And when they start aging, they start having speckles of black, and then the speckles coalesce and become black totally. So if you see a lion with a black nose, you know that that's a pretty old lion. And it has been shown through this paper by Whitman and others, 2004, that there's a strong correlation between nose coloration and age. And this was a study which was done in Serengeti. And then apart from the nose coloration, you also have like to look at the pride association, because these animals are also territorial. So we have different prides within the study area. So based on where you find the lion, it's most likely that the individual or the group that you're looking at are like from the pride within that location. And then through the use of whisker spot pattern, it's usually also very difficult once you find individuals whiskers not visible. So like a lion which has just fed, bloody all over, or if a lion is very old, it's usually extremely difficult to see or to identify using the whisker spot pattern. And you also use other features. So through the identification, once we take a lot of photos, we create what we call catalogs. So for all the lions that we're following through the landscape, we've been able to create catalogs of each individual lion. So within the catalogs, you take images of the ears, both the left ear and the right ear, the whisker spot pattern on different angles, the portrait, and then a small description on that individual you are looking at. So you'll be able to tell which pride the individual is from. And then lions will always be given local names and then also codes. So from the guides, from the students, from the tourists, we have a number of lions which have local names. But for scientific purposes, because local names can, like one lion will have 2 or 3 different names, local names. But for scientific purposes, we usually have like a unique code, which is unique to that individual through all the lions that we follow. So all the catalogs that we've been able to create are all found within the Mara Prairie Conservation website, where you will find the catalogs of the individuals that we're following. So as I mentioned, from 2014, we've been able to tell what's happening with the lion numbers and trends. So this figure over here shows the lion trends since 2014 to until last year, and we're now in the process of collecting data, then analyze for 2023. So this clearly shows that the lion numbers within the Mara landscape has quite been very stable, so nothing very worrying. So we have like a range of between 418 individuals to 547 in 2020. So that's the range of the lions that we've been able to follow. And then from this figure, it's also very important to note that any lion with below 1 year is never included into the analysis because there's a high mortality rate, and that's why the cubs or anything below 1 year is not included. So these figures over here only shows lions which are over 1 year and over. And then, as I mentioned, from the methodology that we've been able to tell or show, KWS adopted this same method in 2018, 2020. And it was when the previous strategy was updated. And at the moment, we have like around 2,500 lions in Kenya, up from 1,900 from the previous count. And then through the same methodology, it's now being adopted in different countries in Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and South Africa. So it's a methodology which is now being adopted all across. And then it's also worth mentioning that Mara Prairie Conservation Program is the longest program which has been using the same methodology for almost 10 years now in Kenya. And then there are some resources which are very important for anybody who wants to really know how to differentiate between the individuals. So this book by Hunter's Guide, which also explain on how different features which can be used to differentiate between the lion individuals. So back in 2016, the program had a reservation of young lions just vanishing from the prides. So you know when lions attain, when they attain an age of around three years, they usually move from their natal prides. And there's that period where it's called the nomadic transition period. They move out and they have that period where they just moving to look for their own prides. And from different youngsters from different prides, we've had a number of them, we just move out and we never know exactly what was happening to them. It was until 2016 that we started collaring them to really know exactly what's happening to the individuals when they move out. So we collar both the young dispersing males before they move from the natal prides, and then also with all the adult females on the peripheral prides of the protected area, to really know how they utilize space between the protected area and the community area to address the issues of conflict. So this is one of the projects that I'm doing for my graduate studies, where like I'm looking at the land use of habitat use of collared lions within the National Game Reserve and the conservancies. And from this data, you can clearly see that the adult females have almost clearly defined territories as compared to the young dispersing males. So young dispersing males don't have like defined territories which are being defended. They really move wide and far. And it's through this concern that once they move out of the protected area into the community area, causes conflict. And once a conflict happens, there's bound to have like the retaliation. And we've been able to document a number of collared lions which have been, we lost them through depredation and conflict. So one of the other aim of the project is like quantifying threats. We've had issues of carnivores really depredating on livestock, both outside enclosures or bomas and inside the enclosures also. And then also this one of the things that we're trying to really address to really know exactly why did that happen? Did it happen while they're out in the open and like there are young kids herding them, or was it a boma which is flimsy? And this will be able to be explained more by my colleague when he talks about the community aspect of the program. So some of these lions have had the conflict actually right inside the game reserve. So for this image over here, it was taken some years back of the marsh pride predating on livestock in the marsh area. And you can clearly see that the lions actually knows that what they are eating might not be, like they are also very, very alert, always looking around because they know that these are livestock that they are feeding on. And we've really had like a number of issues within the game reserve, and we recommend the current administration within Narrow County who are taking steps to prevent such images within the National Game Reserve. So within also quantifying the threats, we believe that the community living adjacent to the protected area, Masais who own livestock. And Masais have always tolerated these carnivores for ages. And the only conflict comes around when they depredate on livestock. That's only when the issue happens. And we've had incidences where like we've lost a number of predators through retaliation and spearing. And through this, we have with the community arm of the program, which is able to address such conflict from being happening. And the KWS vet have always been on top of trying to help treating of these animals whenever the conflict happens. So through the calls for conservation, with the young dispersing males and the adult females, we now in a stage where we want to call at least 20 individuals from different prides within the peripheral prides. So the peripheral prides, the lions which utilizes the space between protected area and the community area. And through calls for conservation, use the platform of AgRanger, where we have like our lion ambassadors with smartphone and connect with the respective lion callers in the zones and then geofence the area and be able to control any potential conflicts once a lion crosses a geofence within like a protected area to prevent conflict. So through the lion ambassadors, which are also the employees of the program out in the community area, we have like that initiative. And currently we're using Mara Elephant Project as Ranger platform, but we're in the process of getting our own to be able to address the conflict from happening through calls for conservation. So with the second species, the cheetah, we also look at the abundance and densities within the study area, being able to tell how the numbers have been happening within the study area. And as opposed to the lions, the identification of cheetahs is a bit different. So we look at the whole body patterns or the spots on different individuals to really tell different between the individuals. So you take an image of the whole body, the left side and the right side, and then look at those unique spots to tell exactly which individuals you are identifying. So also for the cheetahs, we use the same methodology, SCCR, and we've also been able to do this for the last almost 10 years. And we've also been able to show the cheetah trends and abundance for the last almost 10 years within the study area. And then also we aim to color a few cheetahs also, because we've also been able to show like the average dispersal age of cheetahs is usually like around 16 months. This is from almost like 44 groups. And from the 44 groups, we have only been able to account for only 4, not knowing or not being able to account for another 40. So through coloring of a few individuals, we'll be able to really know exactly where they're moving to or what's happening to the individuals. And one of the biggest threats for cheetahs within the study area is overcrowding at sightings. And this has been actually a major problem, especially within the National Game Reserve. So uncontrolled number of vehicles at sightings. And from this, like the cub recruitment within the National Game Reserve has really dwindled as opposed to the conservancies. The conservancies, the cheetahs within the conservancies seems to be recruiting their cubs into maturity more as opposed to the cheetahs within the game reserve. But there's an initiative by the custodians of Narrow County to have like an anti-harassment unit, a cheetah anti-harassment unit to control the issues of overcrowding within the sightings on specifically on cheetahs. And we've previously shown that there's a strong negative correlation between the number of vehicles and the number of cub recruitment within the National Game Reserve. And last but not least, we also have like the other species, the painted dogs, or as most of you might know, the wild dog. So there's been the wild dogs has disappeared in the Mara in the early 90s through diseases, and the wild dogs have really vanished for a while now. It was until recently that the program saw a comeback of the wild dogs within the landscape. And the wild dogs are actually mostly within the eastern hills of Pardamat all the way to Nongishu. On the map, the top left on the green spots, those are all the sightings of wild dogs that we've been able to document. That's around the area where the current wildlife training college is located at. So we've been able to see a comeback of wild dog within the Mara. And there's an initiative now in collaboration with the Painted Wolves Foundation to have like a collaborative monitoring of these species from the Mara all the way to Soralo to really document and establish what's happening with these numbers and the wild dogs within the landscape. And in 2019, it's the only time that we really saw like an active den where like we had like almost 9 pups in 2019. But these animals are actually in a very difficult terrain where you can't drive with a vehicle. You can't like use a motorbike. You have to walk. And it's only using like the camera trap. That's the only time that we really documented like, yes, the wild dogs are coming back. And like there's a strong initiative now with a recent survey which was done to roll out a program on specifically on the wild dogs. And with that, I say, Sholem, thank you very much for listening. And I give my colleague, Dominic, to take over the community aspect of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kasaine, for that good presentation of the research side. And just to remind you again, my name is Dominic Olesakat, and I work with the Mara Predator Conservation Program as a community outreach officer. And I'm very much happy to give this presentation to Wildlife Tourism College as one of the alumnus of Koyaki Guiding School. This is a very, very great initiative. I mean, like, good to me to give back to the student and maybe, you know, for them to understand what we normally do as a program. So I will get you through the community side of things, and I will try to, you know, go through my slides, and I hope everyone will be able to understand what we normally do. So we try to engage communities to understand and appreciate the role of predators in the ecosystem. Yeah, so from the community side, we have 3 approach whereby we look on the human predator conflict mitigation, community outreach and awareness, and conservation education. So I will be talking of those 3 objectives. And my colleague has said about the threats that the major threats that we have in the Mara for lions or any other predators is the human-wildlife conflict. So if you see that picture, you can tell that predators sometimes can cause a lot of damage to Masai people, especially when they get into bomas. And this is a scenario whereby it happened in the Mara, whereby a hyena get into a boma and kill almost 300 sheep in one night. So this is a very big threat to livestock and also to predators, because what will happen if this happens is people will go and retaliate. People will go back and try to kill predators, and Kaseni has talked about this, whereby people sometimes get hungry and, you know, need to go and kill predators. So that's an image of a lion having an arrowhead and a spear on its paws. So at the initial stage of this program, we wanted to understand where these incidents happen. And we did a questionnaire survey just to try and understand where are these hotspot areas and where are these conflicts happening. So in that map, you can see the red spots here are where the conflict, most of the conflict happen. It's either during the day or during the night. So we map this area so that we can, you know, put our effort there and talk to people on how we can mitigate this conflict or prevent them not to happen. And also we wanted to understand when and where this conflict happened, and we managed to understand that through that survey that livestock depredation by different predators can happen during inside the bomas or outside the bomas. So when we say the inside the bomas is when cattle or any other livestock are inside a kraal or a boma, and predators get into it at night, or outside the boma when they are herding. I mean, when they are grazing outside in the field. And we came to realize that hyenas and lions and also leopards are most problematic animal when it comes to inside and also outside the bomas. Now, how can we coexist with these predators in the Mara landscape? So we believe that human-wildlife conflict is linked to attitudes, people attitudes, and also benefit. So we believe that if we increase benefit, the attitude of people will increase and human-wildlife conflict will come down. Now, I will get you through what we do as a program and how we can mitigate these conflicts. And I know Kasain has spoke about lion ambassadors. So we employ the young Masai people who we call them lion ambassadors who patrol around the communities. So currently we have 15 lion ambassadors who are working in community land in areas that we call priority landscape. So these areas are areas that are bordered conservation areas, and we call them zones. So these guys work in every zone. So they base in the center of every zone, which has a radius of 7 kilometers. And they patrol from Monday to Friday, collecting data and talking to people on how we can mitigate human-predator conflict. And also collecting a lot of data using a cyber tracker. Some of the data that has been collected is settlement. So in that map, you can see those small red spots. Those are settlements. So these settlements are becoming very rampant, or so many settlements with those zones, and this can lead to a human-predator conflict, because you can imagine a lion that is, in the middle of that zone, where there's a lot of people, there's a lot of cattle, there's a lot of bomas, and maybe less wildlife due to a lot of commotion in those zones. So to understand, we sample some 10 zones just to try to understand livestock depredations in those zones. And we managed to have understand that in some zones, or majority of the zones, conflict happen inside bomas, and some point in outside bomas. And this can help us on how we can talk to people to have good bomas, or also how can we help them to have good bomas, and also how can we avoid prevent livestock outside bomas when people are herding them outside, because that will be a negligence from the herders. So through the communication that the cyber tracker that lion ambassadors are using, they have an app that for communication, whereby they will be talking to people. So whenever they come to, across with an herder or a village elder or someone herding livestock or anyone, they have a communication app whereby they record that they have communicated with them. So I was talking about the film, and we have a small film called Because of Predators, and you can watch it via YouTube. And okay, so another aspect that we talk to communities is a use of barasas, and so we engage with communities by meeting them in their villages, and we just have a small come together, like talking to them on how we can, understand the conflict and the most problematic animals they do get conflict with. Going to another. So some of the solutions that we got from the film was that people were talking about reinforcing bombers, that when we have good bombers, people then will be able to tolerate with predators. Community awareness was another, aspect that people talk about. And also improving herding vigilance was also another aspect that people said we should do. And also reduce livestock numbers and some early warning system. Another big challenge is that people within the Mara have very shoddy bombers and we call them weaker bombers, whereby predators can penetrate in, and you can see in that picture, someone having that shoddy bomber, and most likely that conflict will happen in that bomber. So what we do is we have adopted what we call predator-proof bombers by use of recycled plastic poles and triple twisted chain links and the metal drum we use as a door to protect livestock at night. So this one has proved to be one of the very effective way to reduce conflicts that happen at night by having these enclosures. And having these enclosures in areas that are conflict are common will help people to safeguard their livestock at night. Another thing that we do in areas that conflict happen during the day is we talk to herders. We inform them on how they can be very much vigilant and to have good herding practices. And we also do identification exercise of predators, whereby we ask them on how they can identify different predators, because sometimes we get wrong information of people reporting different predators. So someone can report of a leopard, saying that a leopard has attacked his livestock, whereas it is not a leopard, but it's a cheetah. So we do an identification exercise and also try to make them be alert in areas that there is conflict are common during the day. Another big threat to wildlife, especially predators, is poisoning. So even here in the Mara, poisoning has become a very much challenge to us, because people tend to poison predators whenever there is a conflict. Now, because poisoning is a very silent way of killing predators, people less carcass and with a very poisonous substance, and they just live outside there for lions and any other predators to come back and eat and die as a result. So poisoning is another big challenge here. So how to curb this? We are working with the conservancy rangers and the reserve rangers also to try and educate them on how they can respond to these poisoning incidents. So whenever there is a poisoning incident, they will be aware on how we can, report it very effectively and how to deal with the situation to avoid further poisoning of wildlife. Another thing that we do is we have what we call the anti-poison campaign, whereby we go to markets and we employ young Masai warriors who will perform the dance. So this dance is to talk about the negative effect of using poison. So we reach so many people by feasting the market day and sing to them and have drama on how we can eradicate the use of poison so that they cannot poison wildlife. And what we do is that we talk to them that poison is bad to their health, and as well as bad in the environment, so that they cannot be able to, buy them and use them as a way of killing predators. Conservation education. So we also talk to young children, primary school children, and also we have now started talking with the secondary school children about conservation, because we came to realize that even though these kids live here in the Mara, sometimes most of them have not been able to interact with wildlife in a good way. Most of these kids only interact with wildlife whenever there's conflict. And this happened when we started these wildlife clubs. We wanted to understand what do a kid in the Mara think of predators? So we asked them to draw anything they feel of a predator. And we were so much surprised that most of these kids, majority of them drew lion being speared. So this can tell us that these kids have a very bad perception toward predators, and not because they just don't like them, but because they learn from their parents. They see themselves that sometimes at night, lions or any other predator comes, kill livestock and go back. So they just grew up saying that lions are bad. So we started a conservation education to them. So we started taking them to game drive. And so we partner with some tourism partners, and we take them to conservancies to see lion in harmony. And this has really helped them to understand that lion only come at outside and maybe take advantage of bad bombers and kill livestock. So we partner with some tourism lodges or camps, and we do what we call Twente Porini, whereby these kids are allowed to go to some camps and stay for maybe a maximum of 4 days or 4 nights at the camp, going to game drive and learning a lot of conservation, and also to appreciate like what do people in the world come and see in their doorstep. So that's artwork, and now we have realized that now that after we do a lot of conservation, taking them to game drive, talking to them, now there's a change of perception, and now they have started drawing good images that portray conservation. We also have what we call holiday kids camp, whereby we bring some of these kids during holidays to come and stay with us and learn from the research side and also from the community what we normally do, because we want to create a generation that they are tolerant to wildlife and they can understand in their tender age about conservation. And to that, I say thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for such a wonderful presentation. Really, really informative. And it's so great to learn more about the work that you're doing, helping to conserve predators for future generations. So we are now going to move on to the question and answer session. And I would first like to read out a few comments in the chat. We also have a few questions in the chat, which I'll take first. And then I'd like to pass on to our primary audience for their questions. So first of all, we have Esther. She says, great presentation. A comment from Atandi in the chat saying, very informative research. Human-wildlife conflict is definitely a crucial issue we continually need to address. And then we have another comment from Emmanuel and Gumbi saying, good approach in the human-wildlife conflict resolution. Great insights from the presenters. I hope it can be replicated elsewhere with a few modifications, as of course, one size does not fit all. And then we have one comment from Sarah Dyer. She says, excellent presentations. Thank you so much. And Sarah also had a couple of questions in the chat. So I'll just read out the first one, and then hopefully Dominic and Cassandra, you can answer that for us. And after that, I'll read out her second one. So firstly, we've got, with the lion number charts, why is there over 100 increase from 2019 to 2020 and then a 100 decrease to 2021?
All right, yeah, thank you for the question. So when we started, like I see the range is from like 418 to 520, and this is just like a sampling, and it depends on like different years. So before 2020, when COVID struck, that's when we had like the highest abundance of lions within the landscape. And we can attribute that to the previous year, 2019, where like we had youngsters who did not attain the age of 1 in 2019. And then in 2020, when we did the survey, they had attained the age of 1 year to be included in the survey. So we attribute that partly because of that, but it's something which needs to be looked more in detail to really understand why there was that increase of lions in 2020 compared to the other years, considering that it was a year when there was hardly any tourism within the Mara because of the COVID outbreak.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Just one more question from Sarah. Do you know why the predation in bomas in zone 28 was so much higher than any other bomas, although 27 was also quite high?
Yeah, sometimes we have conflict happen when there is a lot of, sometimes in rainy season, and sometimes when there's a lot of movement of predators, especially subadults, and we believe that in some areas there is because we sample the 10 zones, and there are some areas which are very much dense, which is whereby people move to, after the land was demarcated, people move to where there's a lot of forest, where there's a lot of dense, and a lot of conflict happened because there people doesn't have by that time good bombers, and maybe predators be able to penetrate and kill a lot of livestock.
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer. We do have a couple more questions in the chat, but I would just like to go to our primary audience, WTC. Oh, there's Sarah saying thank you very much. Really appreciate your answers. Thank you, Sarah. I would like to just go to Peterson and the students at WTC and ask if there are any questions from them. Peterson, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. First of all, to thank Kasaine and Sakat for the wonderful presentation. And we're glad to hear from them. So I think we have a few questions we're going to ask. So please, in a minute.
My name is Purity Nampaso. I have a question. If it happens that the predator sent us into the bomas.
Sorry? Yes.
If it happens that the predators enter us into the bomas and kill the cattle, what do you do to the owners? Do you compensate? Thank you.
So for us here as a program, we don't do
yes,
compensation.
I think that was the first one.
Peterson, why don't we let Dominic and Kasaine answer Purity's question first quickly, and then we can do the other questions one by one. How about that?
So thanks,
All
thank
right.
you for that question. And so when we have predators enter these bomas, they do kill livestock. But as a program, we don't do compensation. I know some conservancies do a kind of consolation, like they have a kitty whereby they contribute some funds that goes to that kitty. Then whenever you have a conflict, or your cattle has been, or livestock has been killed by predators, then you will be able to get a little amount, but that's not about a full compensation. So for us here, we don't do compensation because you can imagine how many livestock are being killed at night in the Mara. There are a lot. We do collect a lot of data, and there's so many livestock that get lost due to predators, especially inside bomas. So we don't compensate, but there's a way, there's a protocol whereby you can report to KWS and also to other authorities in order to get ways on how you can prevent further attacks of livestock.
Yeah, and then also to add on SACATs on direct compensation. So we also do a lot of indirect benefit to the communities. So there's a scholarship program, and I know a number of young students are enrolled in Naivasha. So we do a lot of indirect benefit to the communities because of these predators. And importantly, also, it's worth noting the Wildlife Management Conservation Act, and like you have to report and like use the channels which the government like have put in place for such conflicts within the landscape. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for those answers. Peterson, more questions from your side?
Yes, we do, please.
My name is James. I have two questions at once. What are the precautions that you have put in place to reduce the human-wildlife conflict within the Mara? And again, what are the predator trends in terms of population in the Mara? Sunday.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Japit. So I'm going to take that first, and then Dominic will take over. So number one, precaution. So we talked about predator-proof bombers. So instead of having a flimsy bomber and you have a lot of livestock, make sure that you have a proper enclosure or bomber for your livestock. That's number one. Number two, herding practices, because we believe that even the carnivores knows the ages. They know like livestock where there's like a child, or like there's ladies or women, and even like young gentlemen. So that's another precaution. Precaution number three, Dominic talked about herders training on better herding practices and even like the basic ecology of these carnivores. And then your second question on trend, I showed a graph on like lion numbers for the last almost 10 years since 2014. And the trend of lions within the Mara seems pretty stable, nothing really worrying from the numbers that or the abundance and densities that we've been able to document within the landscape. Dominic.
Yeah, thank you, Kasaine. I think Kasaine has answered almost what I was to say about. But James, through lion ambassadors, they will be able like to be like do early warning system, and also to be notifying people that if you have a bad bomber, you need to have a good bomber so that you can protect your livestock before it happens. So, and also, talking to herders and training them on how they can herd livestock during the day, and building of predator-proof bombers, especially in those areas that are hotspots areas, are some of the measures that we are trying to put in place to reduce human-wildlife conflict.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Peterson, more questions from you?
Yes, maybe we can have another one.
My name is.
We can't hear you.
Apart from taking care of predators like lion care for the Okay, apart from taking care of predators like lions, cheetahs, which other wild animal do you provide care or protection?
All right, I'm not sure if I understood your question clearly. So with research, we do all major predators, but two specifically for abundance and densities. That's lion and cheetah. So for all other predators, we still collect data on them, and like it's like a call for students who are willing to come and look the 10-year worth of data that we've collected to look at those specific questions from the data that we've been collecting over the years. If that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. We have sadly turned off WTC's video just because the connection was a bit unstable. Peterson, do you have any final questions on your side? I hope that last answer was sufficient.
Sure, we have one final one you can ask.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My name is Benson. I have a question. Apart from, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, Benson.
The anthropogenic outbreaks of diseases, talk of rabies.
I think we haven't had that question.
Talk of rabies in wild dogs and the canine distemper in live. What are the measures that the project put in place in order maybe to minimize the occurrence of the disease? Apart from maybe they do undergo problem resulting from the outbreak of diseases. Maybe talk of the rabies in wild dogs and the canine distempers in lamb. What are the minimal measures do the project maybe put in place? Another one is class in lamb and the trends in their population also in the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, Benson. Kasani and Dominic, did you catch that?
I got the first question. Maybe I didn't get the second question. So I'll take the first question on canine distemper and rabies in carnivores. So number one, the measures that we're taking, we have, and we forgot to mention that we have a vaccination campaign in the landscape where like we've been able to vaccinate cats and dogs because it's like a zoonotic disease which is being transmitted from domestic carnivores to the other predators. So we have that campaign running each year to try to prevent the outbreak of such diseases. So that's number one. Number two, we also take vigilance or out in the field, looking at the condition of these carnivores to be able to report that on time to the relevant custodians in case there's like any diseases. So we've been able also to document like the conditions of these carnivores while monitoring them to transmit the information to the relevant custodians. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Benson, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, there was a last one, huh? Sorry, there was a last one. What are the side effects of collars on animals that have been collared? Maybe that was the last one. Yes.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Peterson. That's a very good question. So these gadgets are usually tested before they are deployed to any animal. They're usually tested to see their impact. And like from what we've noticed, like with the lions, they hardly actually like any negative impact of them. It's only like when they are darted, like the first few days that they'll feel like there's something in their neck, but from that, they'll never know exactly, like it doesn't bother them in like their activities. And we can clearly show this when we try to detach one lion with a collar because we detach them remotely. And when the lion was the collar was detached, the lion didn't realize that something has happened to it. So we had to push the lion away to retrieve the collar. So the impact of these collars on lions, it's like pretty very minimum, if any. And also considering the amount of data that you collect, it's really worth like collaring a few lions because we're only collaring like 1% of the lion within the landscape and only lions on like the edges, not on the core areas where like the tourism are.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I believe that might have been our last answer, our last question from WTC. So I am going to move on to the questions in the chat now. We have a question from Emmanuel Ngumbi. He says, how do you complement the culture, especially the perception that new Morans after their initiation have to kill a lion to prove their manhood? What are the alternative rites and how can we demystify this cultural belief?
So luckily here in the Mara, we no longer have a culture whereby people go and kill lions for that. So it's good that it has gone here. So we don't have that challenge now. And I think because people went to school and we only have that challenge from people who are coming from Tanzania. But the Kenyan government is very much vigilant on, in terms of wildlife, protection. And also we do still have some little, small, clan within the Mara who try to, do that. But we have been through barasas and some community engagement. We with village elders and chiefs, we have been able to try and talk to them to, not to follow that tradition and, way of killing predators.
Yeah, that's number one. Number two, we mentioned that we also have like land ambassadors. So those are the young brothers out in the community. So like they're employed. So instead of going to kill them, you are employed to protect them. So that's one of the other ways that we use to make sure like these animals are protected.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Emmanuel. It's really great to note there just how important education is, how it can help to change people's perceptions of things and also to update traditions as well to be able to live harmoniously with these wildlife. So thank you for that. Another question in the chat from Dennis Zimba. He says, great presentation. What do you do during an assessment of a conflict in a case where 300 livestock are killed? And how do you comfort the affected farmer?
Yeah, one thing down here that we have noticed here that people are, especially the Maasai people, are very much generous. Whenever they start conflict, people tend to bring livestock to that person who got an attack. And also to that guy, we build a good bomber to him just to protect livestock. And he got a very good predator-proof bomber. And I think that's one of the ways that people tend to, when you have a good bomber, and you will be able to protect your livestock at night. So whenever they start conflict, and before people go retaliate, we have the line ambassador who talk to people, and then if we can do something like having a bomber, a good bomber to the person, then that will help.
Yeah, so at the moment, we've been able to construct almost 100 predator-proof bombers across the landscape. And it's only like through the areas where like there's a lot of conflict. So that's number one. Number two, education and awareness. So for the case that we showed sheep and goats, almost between 200 and 300, if like you look that clearly and in details, so 200 to 300 sheep and goats, that's equivalent to almost 1 million Kenya shilling at a rate of 5,000 Kenya shilling. So that's a full million shilling. So who puts his money, 1 million shilling, in a flimsy place? So it's all education that you can like also have like a few livestock to protect the other. So education, awareness, that's the way to go, because with the whole like families within this area of villages, we have almost like 6,000 when we only been able to construct like 100. So there's no way we'll be able to construct all that within the like the landscape. But I know from other stakeholders, because I also mentioned partnership, there's also other partners who are also helping with predator-proof bombers where like the need be.
Okay, great, thank you. We did have another question from Dennis in the chat asking about compensation, but I believe we have covered that. So I will move on to Arnold Aricho's question. He asks, population increase is one of the anthropogenic pressures to the natural resources and wildlife. How are you working to combat poor settlement patterns, and what new methods do you suggest or implement?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because number one, when Kenya got its independence in 1960s, we were less than 10 million people. The recent census, population census, which was done in the country, we have 52 million people. But it's also worth noting that the pastoral communities living adjacent to these protected areas, their population is still, it's not really that big compared like to other tribes across the country. So number one, I know from partners, there's an initiative and awareness on things like family planning, education, and all that, and even like the proper use of like space, so planning. So it's a combination of efforts to address the anthropogenic effect on human population.
Great, thank you. So we've got a comment from Jonathan and Puya in the chat. Says, you're doing a great job, especially wildlife clubs who might witness them in various forums, which is great. Jonathan also asked about compensation, which we have covered. So thank you for that, Jonathan. Kirsten, you've got your hand up. Let's take it to the floor and you can ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kassane and Dominic. It's been an amazing talk. I'm just incredibly impressed with both your work on environmental education and the incredible data sets that you have collected. I had two questions. The one is about conflict within conservancies between wildlife conservation and tourism. You were mentioning that quite devastating impact of tourism on the cheetah reproduction. So I was just wondering whether you could tell us how that is being addressed. And then the other question was about conflict between the different predators, between wild dogs, lions, and cheetahs, and whether you've tracked those impacts on those between those species. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kristen. So number one, on tourism. So we must acknowledge the effort that the current county government is taking, especially within the Mara ecosystem. So there are 2 or 3 legislations which were recently passed, which will be able to really address some of these challenges. So number one is the Masai Mara National Park Management Plan, and then we also have the Greater Mara ecosystem plan, and then the spatial plan. So once all these are fully implemented, I know it has started working, and like it will be able to address the challenges, especially for mass tourism, because like it's really chaotic, and we must give credit where it's due. I think the current administration with the park warden, Mr. Minis, are really trying, and that's why they're initiating the anti-harassment unit within the game reserve. So you don't see that within the conservancies. The conservancies, they are like their legislation is pretty very strict. But we also have to the same to be done within the game reserve for prosperity of these species. So that's number one. Number two, within the interspecies, so like wild dogs, cheetahs, and lions. So one of the things that we've really realized, beside collecting our data, we've seen like a sharp increase of hyenas within the ecosystem. And this will definitely have like an impact on other mesocarnivores. So like especially the cheetahs and the wild dogs. So one thing I've personally witnessed within like while monitoring, once there's usually like a commotion from cheetahs hunting, they're bound to be hyenas coming towards the cars because they know there's something. And through the what we call kleptoparasitism, where like the hyenas will snatch kills from cheetahs, and that has been like a major issue. So I mentioned that we've collected a number of of data,
Thanks,
and with the resources
Yes.
that we have and the personnel, we're always inviting students to come and look at those specific questions to be able to answer them going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you as well, Kirsten, for your question. I'm going to go back to the chat now. We do have quite a few more questions to get through. So from Christopher Tuit, I'm very sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly. Given that weak or ineffective bomas are a significant cause of livestock loss, is there a program to help provide or finance predator-proof bomas?
Yes, for predator-proof bomas, yes, we have some donors who really help us. And as I mentioned, all activities are data-driven. So once we get like a donor giving out predator-proof bomas, we look at the data and see where like they're supposed to go. We just don't distribute them because we really like also in a big landscape, and considering that it's not as much, so we consider like the most affected areas as like priority.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, Christopher, for your question. Next question from Brian Ortiego. Mine is on conservation awareness. So after how long do you access perception change in the community, and how do you access that?
We started doing a conservation education since 2014. And with some few schools, only with 5, with a maximum of 150 members, I mean like students. And this has took us almost between 3 to 5 years to, talk to them, taking them to game drive, doing a lot of conservation initiatives and talking to people, just to realize that there's a slightly change of perception. So we are now, getting some positive impact about conservation, and people want to join the conservation education. More people want to join the clubs, want to be part of it. So I can say between 3 to 5 years down the line.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got another question from Emmanuel in the chat. His question is referring to the Sustainable Development Goals. So he says SDG 17 is assumed to be the backbone of all the other Sustainable Development Goals, since it entails partnerships between agencies, and including government agencies, private sector, civil society organizations. So how do you embrace the ideals of this SDG? And if we're interested, are you open to any partnership, especially in your environmental awareness program? So Emmanuel works for the Giraffe Center in Nairobi. They do a lot of environmental education. So that's a really great question, Emmanuel. We'd love to have this session to spur on some kind of collaboration like that. We'd love to hear your thoughts, Kasani and Dominic, from now, but also following this, I will, Emmanuel, put you guys in direct contact as well so you can discuss further.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And yes, as when I started my presentation, I said one of the pillars, KWT's pillars, is partnership. We're really open, and like, if you really, because we all are aiming towards the same goal, it's like, rather than like having competition, we just work towards the same goal, and that's the way to go, especially towards the SDGs on partnership. So feel free, like we welcome, and like there's different components that we can partner in. Yeah, so feel free and send your application. We'll be able to take that in.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned, Emmanuel, I will put you in touch with Kasani and Dominic going forward. Another question from Jonathan and Puya. Which strategies are you likely to put into place to bring back the glory of wild dogs in the Mara landscape?
Thank you. That's also a very good question. So I said it's only the program which has documented the comeback of wild dogs after several years. And one of the ways, the strategy that we're using, number one, we were invited in Zimbabwe to look at the successes of painted dogs in Zimbabwe, which seems to be doing so well. But the challenges in Zimbabwe are totally different from the ones in the Mara, because ours is more on perception, and in Zimbabwe it's more on poaching. So one of the strategy, as I mentioned, is data-driven. So we just finished a questionnaire highlighting different components, and based on that, we are able to put appropriate measures or strategy to see like the comeback of wild dogs within the Mara. And then something else to mention is that the sightings that we've had of painted dogs within the Mara are all like right on the edge of the protected area and the community area. So that's also like brings up challenges, especially if the painted dogs are seen in communal land. So as I mentioned, we just finished a questionnaire. We are analyzing that, and then we have like the next steps going forward. And then this is done in collaboration with Painted Wolves Foundation and Soralo, because we want to, like, these animals are really wide-ranging, and we like have to look at a bigger landscape towards the strategy.
And just to add that, what Kasena said, we also talk to people in these areas that wild dog has been spotted. And we also just finished what we call wild dog feedback, wild dog barasas, whereby we just talk to people about wild dog, that there is comeback of wild dog. And people need to understand that wild dog do move, and so that they can be, ready, and also understand that there is a comeback of wild dog, and maybe they might come across with these dogs in the field.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I have to say, on a personal level, that's really great to hear. Wild dogs are just my absolute favorite animals. So it's great to hear that they are sort of making a comeback, and thank you for your contribution to that. So we have another question. I'm really sorry. I think I'm going to pronounce this name very wrong. Judon. How do you plan to solve the increasing number of predators with the increasing number of livestock that are not zero grazed?
Very good question. Considering that our culture, the Masai, believe that all livestock in the world belong to them. But one of the strategy is that we're aiming in education of quality over quantity. So the species, the Masai species livestock, we consider numbers, like having so many for prestige. But with the younger generation, they're now seeing the value of having fewer because of things like climate change. There's been a lot of drought killing hundreds of them. So there's that initiative, and I mentioned the newest baby of the program called the Livelihood, which is able to address the issues of community with livestock, and also the environmental restoration initiative, and even like proper care of the livestock.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Sadly, I've just been on the phone with Peterson from WTC. They seem to be having some real network issues. They're going to try and reconnect for the last bit of the session. But just a point to note that these meetings are recorded. So if there's any time you would like to look back on it, as Johan said, these meetings all go up within a week. This will be up on our website and up on YouTube. So you're free to watch it as many times as you like. So we have a few more comments. Thank you from Emmanuel. Arnold says, thanks, very nice presentation. And I think we are out of questions. We've got some thanks, which I completely echo. Consolata says they saw wild dogs in Mbokisho last week, which is amazing. Very jealous, Consolata. Jonathan Mpuya says, great presentation, Ashe Oleng. Moret has also put in the chat the link to our website, where you can view all the presentations, not just in this series, but all the presentations that ShareScreen has done. So feel free, please, to browse that. Are there any further questions from anyone just before we finish? Okay, I think we might be finished. Oh, I see Kirsten popping up. Kirsten, have you got questions, or you just wanted to say
No,
hi?
I'm just wanting to have a smiley face to Kasane and Dominic to say thank you very much.
Yeah, we truly also really appreciate, and I also see in the chat our scientist, the program scientist Niels, and if I'm not sure, Niels, if you have like one thing to add, heading the research part from MPCP.
Thank you very much, Cassini. No, I think it was two brilliant presentations. So I have nothing more to add. Just the last comment, what someone saw wild dogs in Onkishu. I'm really happy to hear that, and I need to follow up because I've not heard that. So that's very interesting. But anyway, thank you to you both and for everyone that listened in to these presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nielsen. Oh, sorry, Kasani.
Yeah, thank you, Niels. So also want to take this opportunity to truly appreciate all the participants. Thank you for listening, and please follow the Mara Predator Conservation Program on Facebook, Twitter, and even like on the website. And please feel free to get in touch with us. We always welcome partnership, suggestion towards the conservation of these magnificent species for posterity. We are just holding this for the future generation. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I would just like to say as well, a big, big thank you from me and all of us at ShareScreen. Big thank you to Kasani and Dominic for such wonderful presentations. Thank you for giving us your time and your knowledge, and for all of the amazing work you're doing at MCP. And also thank you as well to our primary audience, the Wildlife Tourism College. I see Peterson's just managed to come in. I really hope they can hear us. Thank you so much for enabling us to put on this series and to share knowledge all the way across Africa. Just final thanks again to everyone in our audience. It's so great to see that this message and knowledge is being shared all across Africa and indeed the world. Thank you so much for coming. Final note, we will be having the next session in this series, same time next week on Tuesday the 26th. And that will be a talk by Sean Anderson and Lawrence Mbalati. They will be talking about their work at Enonkishu, which is a community-owned conservancy in the Mara area. So thank you so much again, everyone, for coming, and really enjoy the rest of your week.